Good afternoon. This is a rehearsal. It may turn into the video, but it's starting out as a rehearsal. Um, I just finished my four-part series on the history of yoga, and it seems to be doing quite well online. But this also may turn into a four-part grouping. Each one of these visits shouldn't be more than talks, shouldn't be more than 15 or 20 minutes, I think. So the total time of this shouldn't be more than, I would say, an hour to an hour and 20 minutes at the most. And this is on a very important subject. In fact, it's one of the most important subjects of yoga. Not, I would say, in the top 5 subjects. Moksha being the most important, well, Brahman being the most important, Atman being the second most important, the practice of yoga being number 3, moksha being number 4, and number 5 would be the combination of karma, karma and the other one being dharma, karma and dharma. I call them the cousins. So to get back to the subject itself, I'm going to start off with this talk on the subject of karma yoga, which is known as the path of each one of these. There's 4 types of karma, 4 headings for karma. Karma in general is the path of selfless action. Most people just think it's action-reaction. You're paid back by punishment for bad actions. You're paid back for rewards for good actions. Well, that's the general idea and the general knowledge that's out there. But in reality, it's nowhere near the true definition of karma. So the 4 different types that I will be talking about, they're called paths, not types, P-A-T-H-S. There's bhakti yoga, there's jnana yoga, or sometimes called jnana yoga, there's raja yoga, and then of course there's karma yoga. Those are the 4 different types of yoga that make up the paths. All roads lead to Rome. All these paths, if followed properly, and the reflection, the meditation, the study, the work is put in, should eventually lead you during the course of your life to your ultimate goal, which is liberation of your soul and contact with your soul while you're still encased in the body. The soul is still encased in the body. So that's sort of the lead in. So now I'll go ahead and start if you don't mind. So karma yoga, I'm reading from my notes here. So if you see me reading, this is not a cheat sheet. I wrote this, and I'm just doing this from my notes. I call this paper I wrote "Understanding Karma Yoga," which is a simple, but I consider it to be one of the shortest titles on any of the papers I've ever written, but I also consider it to be almost a perfect little title, short and sweet, as they used to say in the old South. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I'm James Exum. My yogic name is Sakshi, which means the witness, and as I say in most of my videos, I chose the name Sakshi as my yoga name because that's the name I gave to my soul when I first made contact with my soul. I felt kind of strange just saying, "Hey soul, help me out here." So I said, well, if you have a friend, and I have befriended my soul, I said, then you need to refer to your soul with a name. And so in yoga, there's 2 important things in the universe, in the cosmos: name and form and name. Form came first, name came second. So I named my soul Sakshi after very careful consideration. It means the witness, because the soul in all of yoga is considered the witness while it's in the human body. just a witness of what's going on. Okay. So now I'll start. Thank you. So karma yoga, known as the path of selfless action, is a profound yogic discipline. That's what these are. They're disciplines within Hindu philosophy that emphasizes acting without attachment to results or rewards. So it's acting for the sake of doing your duty generally, or your chores, or what's expected of you by yourself, family, or society. You do the act, washing dishes, helping a friend, doing a good deed, sort of the old Boy Scout idea of doing a good deed, helping the little old lady across the street. But you don't do these deeds or actions for the sake of a preconceived result or a pre-expected reward. You just do them strictly to be doing them because they are your dharma, they are your duty. And you do them properly, because improperly you would be falling over to the negative side of karma, which can result in negative results almost instantly or down the road. So you don't want to do anything by setting attachments to results or rewards. You just don't want to do that. Okay. And that's what karma yoga is defined as. The second one is jnana yoga, which is knowledge. That is knowledge. This is another path. Raja yoga is another path that deals with meditation. And then these really don't have a strict order to be listed, but most people do list them in a strict order. I'm not going to bother with that, because if I choose one or two of these as the paths for my life to follow to reach the results I wish to reach eventually, then I can choose of those four and I can put them in any order I want. Well, I've chosen 2 out of the 4 for my lifestyle and my life's, the 2 blend together to form my unique path, and that is jnana yoga, which is the knowledgeable side of it, which is what I do. I do research, I write, so I'm working within the parameters of the knowledge of yoga. I also teach. And then the other one I chose, of course, was the karma yoga. I like that one because it keeps me on the straight and narrow. And then the jnana, the knowledge, keeps me on the straight and narrow, and also on a path to continually gain knowledge that I can share with the world, as I'm doing now through these series of videos. Okay. The Raja yoga is the meditation. I practiced meditation early in my life, and I'll truthfully say I don't practice it as often as I should, but then again, each person chooses the path, or the blend of the paths, in plural. Meditation, just sitting around thinking, is meditation, as long as you're not allowing the mind to drift. Any single focus sitting where you have a laser-like focus on one concept, and you're thinking it through, and not, even though new thoughts will come into your mind to sort of take you off the subject just for a few seconds, if you reject those thoughts or put them aside and say, well, I'll think about you later, now go on, like little children, they'll come and, pull on your coattail or your skirt tail if you're a woman, trying to interrupt you while you're in the middle of a thought. Just say, go on, I'll get to you later. Or sometimes they can be disruptive interruptions, very disruptive. Negative thoughts, the ego jumping in there. Why are you wasting time with that? I'm your ego. I'm in charge here. I know what we need to do. Well, no, that's another story. We'll get into that in a later video. But the ego is not necessarily your friend. The ego can work against you. It's a devious, I'm going to just call it a creature. It's not a creature, but it's a good term for it. Sometimes it acts like a creature sometimes. So the Raja is a meditation focusing on the union of the individual self with greater cosmic order through mindful, duty-bound action without expectations of fruits. Well, that's similar again to karma. So let's move on. The term karma means action. Yoga means union, symbolizing the connection between individual efforts and the universal whole. Well, I couldn't have written a truer statement than that. I have written statements as true, but that one encapsulates it pretty much in less than 20 or 25 words. Excuse me. When you see me put the back of my hand to my mouth, I am not burping. I have Parkinson's and a Parkinsonian disease, and that Parkinsonian disease interferes with my voice box and my breathing sometimes, and sometimes I'll have that interruption in my speech, and I'm just simply covering my mouth while that's happening. It's my way of stabilizing, dealing with it. So yoga means union, symbolizing connection between individual efforts and the universal whole. And according to the law of karma, every action has consequences. I had a friend over one day, well, he's an acquaintance over one day, and he was talking about things happening in his life, and he was talking about the consequences. I said, well, you know, consequences are very important. And he's an older man. We live in a 55 plus community here, retirement, retirement community. And he took that comment I made to heart. And I think I don't know how he's changed his life, but he seems different every time I see him now, which is rather rare. Okay. So, according to the law of karma, every action has consequences, but karma yoga teaches detachment from these outcomes. When I was young, I was a fierce competitor in the game of tennis. Even though I'm very small, I was a fierce competitor. You know, I wouldn't cheat, but I played a hard game. Didn't win them all. When I was young, if I lost, I'm talking about under 30, if I lost, you're not fully mature even at 30. You may think you are, but you're not. From my perspective, at almost 75, you're not mature. You only think you are. You're maturing. In fact, you're never fully mature in your lifetime. Even today, going on 75, I sometimes catch myself being childish. You know, well, why haven't I learned to deal with that? Well, life is a lesson. A lesson. It's an incredibly long lesson if you live long enough in learning day to day. There's no owner's manual that comes with the human body or with the human mind. You just learn as you go. It's basically on-the-job training. Keep that in mind, folks. And don't be hard on yourself if you don't do. You think you know something and it doesn't turn out all right. That's the consequence. But you learn to in yoga, you learn to detach yourself from the consequence. If the consequence is positive, perfect example. If I win at chess, playing the computer on my internet, if I win at that computer chess game that's on there against an opponent that's well matched with me, then I'm happy, but I'm not ecstatic. If I lose, I say, well, I actually say this. I look at that computer, that computer, that chessboard on that screen. I'll go, well, you won that one. You know. Now, is that becoming depressed because of it? No. I'm not really considering the results. I'm just enjoying the game. And this is what life is like. Once you get to a certain point and a certain level in yoga, your whole mindset will change. And you'll say, well, that didn't turn out all right. As I said in one of my older videos, when I was in business, sometimes I'd lose $1,000 and sometimes I'd make an extra $2,000. But I learned that business is also a game. In fact, they have board games. Monopoly is the game of business, real estate and things. And then I think they have one, I don't know all the board games, I haven't played them in years, but they were fun and I learned about them, learned about life, about business, so to speak, from those games. But even business is a game. You win, you lose. There's a book called Siddhartha, and in it, the young man that goes through his lifespan in that book up to the time of his near death, he learns the game of business later in that book, and he learns that you win, you lose. but you're still you, and life goes on and the game continues. And that's how it should be. You do not want to stress yourself out over the actions that lead to the consequences that can elevate you or depress you. You don't want to go manic, you don't want to go depressive. You just simply say, well, so be it. That's the way it turns out. The Spanish have a wonderful saying, que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. And that's a good way to live your life. My personal one I used to use, I don't use it much anymore, is row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. And that's an easy way to deal with problems or even moments of triumph. You're still going down the stream of life. So yoga teaches detachment from these outcomes. It encourages individuals to perform their duties, their dharma, as I said earlier, and with dedication and without stress. See, it lowers your stress if you get into this state of mind, or expectations of rewards. And that was pretty darn good there. We've used up 16 minutes and 17 seconds, so I think I'm going to cut this first video off at about 20 minutes. So I'm going to try to go through it real fast. The core principles of yoga are selfless service. That's called in the Hindi or the yogic phrase for it is seva, S-E-V-A. Detachment is varagya, V-A-I-R-A-G-Y-A. You can look these up, Encyclopedia, Wikipedia, or Yogapedia. I recommend those two sources. I use them quite often. Equanimity, which is called Samatvam, S-A-M-A-T-V-A-M, and Dharma, which is duty, which I just mentioned a moment ago. Those are the core principles of karma yoga. I'm not going to go into the full definitions. I'm just going to lightly touch on all this because this is an introductory video, and like I said, I'm going to try to stay under 20 minutes for each one of these. So, but you do want to practice your karma daily. You really do. It's accessible to anyone. Once you learn that you can do it, then you can practice it. And the more you practice, the better you should become. It may not be for everyone. If you find it's not for you, then go to one of those other three principles. The Raja, the Jnana, the Bhakti. Go to one of those other ones to see if those fit you better. You have 4 choices, and you can blend any of them, or you can blend all of them. So, because it's accessible to everyone, not just spiritual practitioners in ashrams, these key practices could and should include being fully present and attentive in all your tasks. The things you do every day, you should be. Nowadays they use the term mindfulness. That term was borrowed from yoga, from yogic principles, from yogic teachings that go back over 2,000 years. Mindfulness, everyone thinks of as coming on the scene in the last 20 or 30 years, which it did, but it was borrowed from yoga teachings. Letting go of attachments. Well, older people are better at this than young people. Young people are collectors, old people are sellers. You buy when you're young, you sell when you're old. And hopefully the things you bought when you were young turned out to be good enough investments that when you sell them 20, 30, 50 years later, you make a profit, a good profit. I've been very lucky in my investments. Serving others without expecting thanks or recognition. Well, that should be from childhood. I was taught from childhood to help others. You see someone in need. That's in the Bible. That's the Holy Bible. That's the story of the Good Samaritan, and you might want to look that one up. Setting intentions that dedicate actions to the greatest good. In other words, if you're going to start off your day and you say, today I'm going to do something special, well, that's your intention, but zero in on something that will do the greatest good in the course of that day. Don't just pick out something willy-nilly. In other words, pick out something that will truly change the world or change an individual's life or even society. A family member you can have, a good cause for the city, a good cause for the neighborhood. It's up to you. And here's the last one in those key practices. Regularly examining motives to ensure actions are not driven by ego. Well, now we just talked about ego a moment ago, and it's not always your friend. And I think that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to pick up, I'll finish the yoga, the karma yoga in the next video. But I think I've given you a taste of my mind's thoughts on this subject and from my writings. And just that's enough to review. Rewind the tape, listen to what I said. I spelled out the keywords for you. Look them up on Yogapedia, look them up on Wikipedia. If you're going to join the followers of yogic philosophy, which I am a yoga philosopher. In fact, I call myself a yogi, which is simply a man that the ladies have a different name. I think it's Yogini. I'm not quite sure of the pronunciation, but a man that follows the principles and the work of yoga, and also gets into the study of it, and sometimes becomes a writer and a teacher, is a yogi. It's nothing special. The words are not so profound that they're carved on tablets or anything, enshrined in history. It's just me telling you and sharing with you my thoughts. Well, again, I'm James Exum Sakshi. I want all of you to have a good life, and I've come up with a little closing that I'll try to repeat here. Be good to yourself. Be good to others, and pass those two thoughts along. Share those two thoughts with other people, friends, family, even strangers. And who knows, someday we may wake up 10 years from now and look around and say, oh, what a wonderful world we're living in. Goodbye to you, and thank you.